Hello everybody and welcome to a new Photoshop tutorial with PSD-Box. Today I want to show you how to create this fantasy looking manipulation that you see here on the screen using a 3D render and basic stock photography. So in this tutorial I will show you how to blend everything together to get this sort of look and how to make some basic lighting effects, how to make shadows, how to paint shadows, and how to blend everything together to get this image that you see here. I would say this is an intermediate level tutorial, so if you know your way around Photoshop, you will be able to create this without too much of a problem. You can use Photoshop CS6 or higher. I will make this tutorial in Photoshop CC, but if you want to use, for example, like the color lookups, you should use Photoshop CS6 at least. You'll have the links to the resources on the video description, and also you can make this in other software. I say this because I've heard people that they made my tutorials even in Affinity Photos. So if you're skilled with another software, you can try and you can give it a try with your preferred software. So I hope you will enjoy this tutorial, and let's get started. Now, before we get started, I want to thank Envato Elements for supporting this video. They are today's paid sponsor, and I've been using Envato for years, actually, buying templates for my website, intros, and Envato Elements is like a huge library of design assets, not only graphic assets, but also video assets, intros, WordPress templates, plugins, and all that sort of things. Now, I've been using Photoshop since 2009, and as a graphic designer, you need lots of graphic elements, and it's not always easy to find everything in one place. You'll have to get stock images from all sorts of sites, and what I really like about Envato Elements is that you get everything in one place. So you can even get 3D renders, 3D elements. So unlike other stock photos, you can find brushes, layer styles, product mockups, PSD files, textures, patterns, backgrounds, stock images, video footage, icons, fonts, and all that kind of thing. So if you're working on projects, on design projects, you'll find everything that you will need into one single place, and that's really what I really like about Envato, because with just one subscription you get access to all of that, and you'll have access to millions of assets, like literally millions of stock photos, icons, and everything that you will need for design projects. So that being said, if you want to try Envato Elements, if you want to see their gallery and see all the assets that they have, I will include the link on the video description. Just go there and check them out. So I hope you will enjoy it, and let's get started with our tutorial. So the first thing you want to do is download all the stock images that you will need for this, and we will start by creating the background first. So this is the finished manipulation, and I will copy merged just so I can create my new canvas, and it's 3000 by 5000, but I'm gonna make it smaller. I will make it just 2500 by 3700, and just click OK. Now we'll get this countryside image, and we're going to bring it here, and let me just see how wide this road is. So about 2/3 or something like that. So I'm going to make it just a little smaller, about there. Just leave some room on each side, and we'll put it there. Now what I wanted to do here, as you can see, it's rounded, so it's not straight like you can see here on the image. So what I will do is just delete first the original background, select my layer, let's name this ground, and what I will do is just I'll press Ctrl Command T and click this icon here, or go to edit free transform, and from here I will choose the R, and about, let's say, the band you can put it to about 25 or 26, and then I will get the quick selection tool, select the sky, and get rid of it by creating a layer mask. Now I will not refine the edge. It looks pretty good like it is right now, so I will leave it like that. Now the next thing we want to do is add the sky. Let's open our stock image, our stock folder, and I will place this image. This is the sky that I used. I will drag it underneath the ground and I'll name this sky. After you add the sky, you might see this line over here, which is from the layer mask of the ground layer. So just paint with black over it to get rid of it completely. And let's see how well we add this. About there, just hiding the mountains on the back. What I will do next is add some trees there on the background, because right now it's too flat and it's not looking really that nice. So what I will do is just add some trees. The way I did it is I used the brush. So go to your stock folder, well, to the stock folder, and you will see the tree brushes pack. This is a pack that I created myself. So just double click them. They should open with Photoshop. Well, actually, looks like it's not. I'll just open it with, choose another one, and just select my Photoshop from here and click open. And they should be added to my brush list. If I now select the brush tool, right click, you should see the brush here on the bottom. Right here it is, and just you can see the trees that we have here. Now select one of the trees, make it smaller, and start painting trees like that. Use different sizes. What you can do is just one trick I use to make it quicker is just increase the spacing. Let's see, make a test, yeah, something like that. And then just also use the shape dynamics to change the size jitter a little bit, so I can create randomly sized trees. Okay, something like this. Just fill the horizon with a few trees there. Now we want to integrate this a little more, so what I will do is just first rename this layer to trees, and I will double click and use the blend if on the blending options, move this underlaying layer on the black side, move it towards the white, and when you see they start to disappear, move back a little bit, press and hold the option key if you're using a Mac, or use the Alt key on Windows. Another alternative, maybe a little better, would be to use a color overlay and just sample a color from the sky, and that's it. Something like that. If it's too bright like this, just lower it like so, and that's pretty much it. Your objective is to make them look like they are a little further away into the distance, so they are not completely black. So I will click OK, and next I will add the moon, and after we're done with this, with the moon and everything, we will blur the whole thing a little bit and move on with the monster and creating the rest of the details. So the first thing I'll do is bring the moon in. So let's change the view to icons and select the moon. I will place it right over here. It's a smart object, so I will double click, just open it on a new document, and you can use the new select object tool if you use a more modern version of Photoshop, or you can use the quick selection tool, and then just mask this. And what I want to do is right click and choose select and mask, because I want to get rid of those edges. So I'll heavily shift the edge towards the negative side, and I'll increase the feather a little bit and the contrast to sharpen the edges back, and click OK. And now save this. Oh, actually it's not going to let me save it, so I'll have to go here. I will name this moon and turn it into a smart object, and that's it. Now we have to add some effects to the moon, but before we do that, we have to work a little bit on the ground. So let's go down to the ground layer, well, right over here, this one, and let's go into the layer styles, and I'll choose color overlay. I want to darken the ground because I want to create a night scene, and I will use the following color, C9E3F7. This color, it's a really light blue, and I will change the blend mode to linear burn and click OK. And now the next thing we want to do is make it even darker. For that I will use a hue saturation adjustment, and I'll set this to -57, the saturation, and the lightness to 37. Okay, so we darkened it, and with the color overlay we gave it this bluish tone, which makes it look a lot more like the sky. And the trees should be more or less the same tone, maybe a little darker, so you can leave them dark like so, but I think it's not too realistic, or you can make them brighter, but I think something like this would look realistic. Click OK, and we have the ground here. Now the next thing we want to do is add the effects on the moon. Let me just check it and see more or less the size of the moon. So let's just make it a little smaller. The reason why I use a pretty big moon, actually let me just use the original size and just size it down like that. The reason why I use such a big moon is because I wanted to act as a background element and make contrast with the pumpkin monster and actually make it stand out a lot more. So that's why I use such a big moon, and also I think it looks nice. Why not? Let's make some effects to it. The first thing I want to do is create the glow around it using a brush. So I will create a new layer underneath the moon, and I will name it glow. Get the brush tool, and you want to use a soft round brush like this. Hardness, let's try about 40, and we'll see how that works. And I'll make the brush bigger, just something like that. The color that I will use for this is a greenish blue. Let's see, something like this. Yeah, that's too strong, so let's just make something darker. We just want a touch of light because we will also use layer styles, so something like that. I think that looks okay. Anyways, we can come back here and modify this with levels or hue saturation if we need to. Now on the moon, let's add some levels with Control L. I'm using keyboard shortcuts and applying this directly on this because this is a smart object, and these adjustments will be turned into smart filters. You can also use clipped layers if you want to, but I will use them straight on the smart object. And I have the blacks to 30, midtones to 1.40, and the highlights to 255. And this is the image, the before and after, just a little bit of light there. And then we will add a hue saturation as well with Control Command U. And here we have 0 on the hue, -6 on the saturation, and on the lightness 37. Like that. We want to make the moon pretty bright. Now we also have to add some effects, so I will double click on the moon layer. This will bring the layer styles panel, and here I will add an outer glow with the following settings. Blend mode set to color dodge. Let's leave the opacity to 100% for now. Spread 14, and size 250 maximum. And the range 79% or 80% if you want to. 79. This will give me this tone, and the color that I used is 64, 64, 64. This will create this stronger glow. If it's too strong, what you can do, you can either make this color a little darker, or you can go back to the glow and modify the glow there, which I think I will use modify the glow, but not to change the brightness of it, but to change the color. I want something a little more green. Okay, we're done with the outer glow. Let's move to the color overlay. So activate color overlay as well. And the color that I used is B1 AB A3. This gray, yellowish gray. Increase the opacity to 100% and change the blend mode to overlay, and this is the effect that you get. Now I'll click OK, and I'll go back to the glow here and press Control Command U. Actually, press Control Command U and change the hue a little bit and see what we get. Yeah, I want something a little more towards green, like so. See that? Before and after, just a touch of green, and we're good to go. Okay, these are all the adjustments that I made to the moon. Now, of course, the moon casts some light on the ground as well. We will do that a little later. What I want to do now is merge everything and blur it. So everything that I have here, I will group it, Control Command G, and I will name this BG. This is my background. Now I will create a new layer on top of it and press Shift Option Command E or Shift Alt Control E if you're on Windows, and name this BG Edit. And here I will go to Filter, Blur Gallery, and I will use the Tilt Shift. And the reason why I'm using the Tilt Shift is because I want the foreground part of this background here of this scene to be in focus, and from about here up I want it to be out of focus. So let me just zoom in at 100% so I can see what I'm doing. Let's leave Photoshop process this. Okay, the transition, I want it just a little smaller and drag this a little lower. Yeah, something like that. So you can see that from here up, I want this to gradually start go out of focus. Now, 9 pixels, I think it's too much. I will just use, let's say 5. Let's see how that works. Yeah, I think it looks okay. Just a bit of a blur. I still want to see some of the stars and the moon as well. So let's click OK. And now we can move on and add the light effects. Let me just increase the brightness of my screen. And for the light effect on the ground, what you can do is create a new layer on top and name it ground light. For this ground light, I will use the overlay blend mode, and you'll have to use like a cyan tone for this. Not too saturated because the background already has some light on it. And let's make it just a click here to see how this will light up the scene. It looks okay, but of course we want to separate this. We don't want to paint on the skies. So what I will do is, since I still have the original layers on the background, I will control click the ground layer mask and go back to my ground light and create a layer mask here as well. So basically I have this, which means that now I can safely paint on the layer, and I will only paint on the ground, not on the sky, unless I go up, which this part of the canvas is not covered by the layer mask, but you can do it by just filling this gap with black. By the way, I activated the mask on full screen by pressing Alt or Option and clicking on the layer mask. This will show the layer mask on the full screen. And let me just paint this out. Okay, let's go back to our image and let me just delete this and do it again. Probably I will use something a bit brighter, so let me just use something a bit more saturated and something more vibrant, and just click again with a bigger brush, and the hardness I want it to 0, and just click again. Okay, well, something I think it's too saturated. Let me just desaturate it and do it again with something a bit bigger. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so we have the light over there. Now we can move on and add our monster. Well, actually, before doing that, let me just use convert this BG edit into a smart object, and really quick I want to use the camera raw filter. I don't remember if I used that on the original, but I just want to increase, actually I think I did. I want to increase the clarity, not that much. This texture thing it's new. Maybe you have a different layout here on the camera raw, because I updated a few days ago, and this is how it looks like now. Probably the temperature, I'll shift it a little more towards blue. Increase the vibrance, not too much, something like that. You can, of course, you can also use filters. You can use a radial filter like so and increase the exposure there on the center, but maybe it's not really a good idea to increase the exposure because we will use the details on the moon, so probably just increase the shadows like that, and probably use some vignette. Let's go on the effects, see if I can find them. Okay, here we have them, vignetting, post crop vignette, like so. Oops, let me expand this so I have more control. Maybe the midpoint, I'll drag it down a little bit and increase the roundness slightly and increase the feather. Okay, so not really a big change, but definitely some change there, especially on the clarity side, which is what I wanted. And I'll click OK. Okay, let me just show you the before and after, just to increase the contrast a little bit and focus everything here on the center. Now let's move on and add our monster. Luckily we have it in PNG format because I got this from, I think I bought this from the Unity asset store. But as I said, you can try looking for elements on Envato. On Envato Elements, you'll find there the 3D category, so you can download 3D elements from there and render them. And let's add this one over here. I want the moon to be the background, as I said. And one thing we have to do here is change the lighting. I actually rendered this with a light coming from the side, but it was yellow. As you can see, this thing here was yellow. So we have to make this blue, but we will have a problem. You can see this texture here is also yellow. This is actually like cracks on his skin, and we want to keep that. Also, we want to keep the head, so we will have to use a layer mask. But first, since this is a smart object, I will use the adjustment straight on the layer. You can use a hue saturation adjustment layer and clip it to the monster, but I will do it like this. And I will just target my yellows. I will click this hand icon and click on this yellow tone and drag. And this will select, actually it selects the red, but anyways, you can see the selector over here. I can move it more towards the oranges, which is what I want to have. Set the saturation to 0 and just move the hue because I want to change the color of this to blue. Actually, not to blue, to this cyan thing. Yeah, something like that. Let me just fine tune it. Okay, that's perfect. Click OK. And of course, this changed the whole range of yellows. So what I will do is just click this layer mask. This layer mask is the smart filter layer mask, and just invert it. If you used a clipped layer mask, a clipped adjustment layer, you can invert the layer mask of that adjustment layer and you're good to go. And now just select the brush tool and paint with, I inverted this layer mask, so the layer mask is now black, and I'll paint with white on the layer mask over the areas where I want this light to go blue, which is these areas over here. So these are lights. These ones are lights as well, but this side is not. And of course, this part of the head, we're not going to touch it. So this is what we get. This is without the layer mask and with it. Basically, we just changed those lights on the body like that. Okay, now let's move on, and we will deal with the shadows a little later. Let me just add a few more details here. The next detail I wanted to add will also contribute to this composition. It's a tree silhouette over there. See this tree over here? For that, we will use the same brush pack that I just used to create the trees there on the horizon. And we will paint this tree on top of the ground light, and also actually on top of everything. Let's name this side tree. Try this one. Right over there, like so. I think that looks better now. Okay, and some more details. We will add some bats here, but let's add those crosses here on the ground. And you will find those included on the stock folder, but you also can download them from my resources website, which is called resources.psdbox.com. From here, you'll find the specs. Let's open this one first, and I'll just fast forward here because I will just randomly place this on the ground. Okay, so I will leave it like that. These are all my gravestones here. You can add as many as you want, but don't overcrowd this. Let's name this gravestones. I put them all inside a group, and what you can do now, make sure you have them on the right place, and you can create a layer mask to the whole group, or you can manually create a mask to each individual gravestone, but I will work with a single layer mask on the group. And from here you can use the grass brush, or you can use any irregular brushes that you have here in Photoshop that comes with Photoshop, or if you have something custom, you can use that. And basically what you want to do is just let me just increase the opacity and the flow. You just paint this like so to just integrate that, create some irregular shapes there, because right now they are too straight, the lines are too straight here. So just create a few random distressed edges here. Of course, now what we need to do here is, for example, on the ones that are here on the back, like this one, we have to also blur it, because you can see the background where it stays, it's blurred. So let's blur that. Select that one, filter, blur gallery. I'll use fill blur, and I'll add about 2 or 3 pixels of blur. Let's see how that looks. Yeah. The next thing we want to do is make these stones darker. They are facing the light, so they must have some rim lights, and also we have to cast some shadows. One thing you can do to edit all of them at the same time is use the group and add a color overlay, for example, to the whole group. Let's try multiply and see how that looks. And of course I will use a bluish tone. You don't want to create silhouettes, that's too dramatic, but use a bluish tone like this, for example. Click OK. This will also help them integrate a lot better with the ground. And let's also create the rim light using this group. You can do it by using an inner shadow. Let's reset that. The blend mode, I will use color dodge. I will use a bright blue. Maybe we will have to change it. Opacity 100%. And use global light. I will not activate it. Distance 3, choke 0, size 7. I think it's okay for me, at least for now. And just add a slight angle to that. And I think it's too saturated, so let's get rid of some of that light. And now let me try some more size. Let's try with 11. This will soften the edge, and probably 5 for the distance. Okay, so it's not much of a light, but check it out before and after. It helps create the silhouette and keep the shape and separate that a little bit from the background. If you want to have less light, you can either drop the lightness on the light on the here on the color. You can make it darker, and that's it. Or you can also increase the size, which will make it softer, but I want to have something pretty strong there, like that. Now we're done with the light and with the color of those gravestones. The next thing we want to do is add shadows. Since I have all of them inside of the same group, I'll also add the shadow inside the same group. So I will select the bottom gravestone and create a new layer underneath, and I will name this gravestone shadow. Get my brush tool, and for that we will use a soft brush. So the technique is the same as always. Manipulations, after a while, if you create your own workflow, you will end up using the same techniques. And start painting. I will activate the transfer here with pen pressure, because I'm using the graphics tablet, but you can do it with the mouse with the low opacity and brush. With the low opacity and flow. Like that. And also what we need to do is create some shadow on the object themselves. So I'll create a new layer on top of the group of the gravestones and clip it to the whole group. If you cannot do it, you can turn the whole group into a smart object and then create a layer and clip it to that smart layer. I will name this object shadow, and just paint, especially on the bottom and right away, especially where it's closer to the ground, like a sort of a gradient. You can try using a gradient to the whole group if you want to. This one is definitely has to be darker because it's facing away from the light. And I forgot to paint the ground shadow for that one, but anyways. And here we have to darken this side and this side. And for this one, we're gonna darken it like that. And I'll go back to the gravestone shadow on the ground because I forgot to paint the shadow here. And since we have this shadow over here, we can also create the shadow on the pumpkin. So actually I will drag these shadows underneath the pumpkin, and I will rename the layer to ground shadow instead of gravestone shadow, because I will use the same layer to create the shadow of the pumpkin monster. I will paint it kind of quickly. I didn't even mask him like I did with the gravestones. You can do it if you want to. I don't know if it's, I wouldn't say it's really necessary. I think it works well without the mask as well. Well, this shadow on the left is really awful. Let me just do it again. Okay, let me show you the before and after without the shadows. Without the shadows and with them. I think it's creating a much more realistic effect. And we're not done with the tree actually. Let me just select it back, this side tree. I wanted to also integrate it a little better on the ambient here, so I will use a layer style. Double click to open the layer styles panel and use color overlay. Just like we did with those background trees, we'll sample a color from the sky, change the blend mode to normal, drag the opacity down until we get something like this. Just a bit of like a mist effect. So instead of having pure black, we will add something like so. Something like that. Anyways, we have to create the glows of light, but we will do that towards the end. Let's add some more details, which are those flying bats. These ones over here. So how do you do that? Now, really easy. I created a brush pack with bats. So again, open the stock folder. And here you'll see a bat folder, and inside of here you can find the PNG renders, okay, and you can also find the 3D object if you want to use it, if you want to open it in Blender and render it your own way. It's an animated object, but I will just drag a few PNG files in here and that's it. So just place them there. Okay, let's make the ambient effects. The first effects I will create are glows. So I'll create a new layer and I will name it glows. Get the brush tool, use a soft brush, really soft brush, and use a gray tone like this. And here the objective is to create a few glows of light, especially where we have angles. For example, what I mean by that is here, for example, around here. Okay, so we will change the alignment of this layer to screen, and now I'll use the mouse instead of using the pen, and just click once over there. Actually, let's try using a tone. Let's use a bluish tone for this. Let's see how that looks. For example, one over there, that's too strong. So here you have to adjust the lightness of the glow as you go. So one click there, maybe something really dark over here. On the tree, we also want to click once there, probably another smaller one over here. Enhance a little bit the head of this monster. I'll create a new layer and put it on color dodge, and I'll use a really dark orange like this and just make a few clicks there, more saturated and almost red actually, just to enhance the colors here on the pumpkin's hands and these textures over here, and make it just stand out a little more like that. See that before and after. And now let's add some adjustments. Let's add I will use color lookup, so I'll add the first one. The first adjustment I will use is edgy amber, and I'll use it on normal at 16% to warm up the whole scene a little bit. Take a look, and darken the whole thing a little bit. Also, it's going to affect the moon a lot more. It's going to affect the highlights especially. And now I will add two more, so I'm going to just duplicate this one, and I will choose load 3D LUT. And for the second one, I will use a preset which I create myself from a pack called Portrait Awesome, and I will use the P824. If you're a premium member, you will find the link on the video description, so you can go and download the whole pack. And if you don't want to download these ones or purchase them, you can use any adjustment that you like. Just see how this affects this, and that's it. And I'm going to use 54 for this. This is the effect that I get with this portrait, with this color lookup. And then I'll add yet another one, and again double click, load 3D LUT, and I'll use another pack called landscape, artistic landscape, and I'll use the 3DL, and I use the PSD box LA14, which is this one, and this is the effect that you get, and I use this at 45%. So really subtle changes. You can use your own, and that's pretty much it. If you want to give them a greenish tone to this, you can use you can use curves or whatever adjustment you want to use for them. And as a final effect, I'll press Shift Option Command E on a new layer on top of everything. This will create a new layer and stamps everything on there. And I'll go to filter, and I use camera raw filter, and you know already the process that I will use here. I'll just increase the clarity, maybe change the temperature if you want to have different color tones. Probably this is too bright, so I'll drag the shadows down a little bit. Also the highlights, I think they're too bright. What else? Texture, I'm not gonna touch that too much. Vibrance, I will increase it. Maybe I have too much green, so I'm gonna shift this just a little bit like that. So really it's up to you here. You can use split toning, for example. If you want to have red on the highlights, you can use this, green, or some red on the shadows and get this sort of tone. What else? My screen goes black because I have the automatic setting on, which I have to deactivate because I don't like it. And what else? I'll just go here into the calibration because I like what you can do here. You can switch the tones of the whole thing if you want to, and just saturate each channel individually, which is something really cool. I really like it. And probably get something like that. And I'll just hit OK. And well, one other thing I forgot to do, and actually I will do with another adjustment, which is the exposure, and just increase the offset a little bit and get something like that, and now drop the opacity. This will create sort of a mist or haze effect. Okay, and we're good to go. Probably on, especially here on the sides, the effect is too visible, and I will probably use some vignette there on the camera raw. Let me just go back here and add some vignette, camera raw, because I think we have too much light there on those shadows, and it's not looking good, at least for my taste. Go to effects and just darken that part like so. Click OK, and now I think it looks better. Okay, so this is our whole manipulation. We're done. If you want to create more depth of field, you can add like falling elements like leaf, or add one of these crosses that stands out on the foreground. Let me just show you the original again. You can see I blurred this one over here, so you can create like, I don't know, maybe zombies or a person standing. It's really up to you. Possibilities are endless. I just wanted to create something simple that was fantasy looking with light effects. You know my style already, so give it a shot, give it your try, and create your own version of it. Use the hashtag PSDbox if you have Instagram, and it will really help if you mention my YouTube video or my website, so that people can find this and create their own version, and just let their creativity go wild and create their own versions of my tutorials. That's all for today. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm Andrei, and I hope to see you on my next tutorial.